situation and you might end up in prison. This situation might come to you, and I want to try to prepare you for this. So, best thing you do, you need to stay out of trouble. Don't go to jail. Don't go to prison, because something like this might happen to you. Right. I'm sure that you guys have heard of the term booty bandit. Well, booty bandit is a term that I'm pretty much sure come from prison. Well, in the state of West Virginia, we had a notorious booty bandit. It was a black inmate. His name was Mohawk. And before you ever step foot, if you was in jail, either going to prison or before you started working in the jail or prison, you might have heard a guy named Mohawk. Like I said, Mohawk was a black inmate. He had been doing time for almost 30 years when I met him. I met him back in 2009. And he had this infamous stare that everybody called the Mohawk stare. And he would look in your eyes and stare you down and try to take your soul away from you. I mean, if you didn't feel like you ever was going to shit your pants or piss on yourself, Mohawk had the type of stare that would make people piss themselves if you was weak-hearted like that. This dude was a real rapist. This dude was a real creepo, snatcher slash killer. This dude also loved black guys, but he preferred, I'm going to say, no, he didn't love black guys. He liked black guys, but he loved white guys. You know, he was friends with the black guys, but he was attracted to the white boys. And his favorite thing was he would go around till he found like the new ones coming in, and then he would get obsessed with one person, and then he would stalk that person and stalk him until he, you know, like a deer, like a lion eating a gazelle, deer out there, till he snatched that prey and he got him. But anyways, like I said, his name was Mohawk, and like I said, he liked white boys. I'll tell you a story about Mohawk that made him and gave him the notoriety that he got in there. There's an incident. I'm not going to say the inmate's name, but I'm going to tell you an incident that happened, and that's the reason why he was notorious for what he did. One time back in the 90s, one day back in the early 90s, there was an inmate, new young guy that come in there, and he was a normal at the time, but he was young and he was white. Normal talking, just like the rest of us. Well, when I met the guy, 2009, he was back in the hole, and I go back in the hole, and that's when I'm working there. And I see this dude, like the window's up here, he's down there at the bottom, looking out like a crackhead. You know what I mean? Like he hit the biggest crack pipe in the world. Just sitting there with his lights off, looking around. I'm like, damn, what the hell? Scared the shit out of me. Like I said, I'm new to this shit. Like I said, it looked like he hit the biggest the biggest crack hit in the world, and he's sitting there tripping. So I asked to see, man, what the heck happened to this dude? What's wrong with him? He's like, man, stay away from him. He's a gasser. He'll throw piss and stuff on you. Just watch out for him. So I told you about my last couple of my episodes before, Behind the Glass. If you ain't heard about it, you don't know what Behind the Glass is, you can go check that out on one of my other episodes. But it's basically 8 cells behind this glass that they put mental health people back here, mix them with regular inmates in the hole to make them go crazy. And it stinks, smells like piss, smells like shit back there. And they practically break you mentally down to where you won't want to get in trouble again. Like I said, I met him back there, and he was it pretty much scared my ass pretty much. Like I said, I was new to this stuff, and he was sitting back there looking around. I know I'm making a retarded face. But anyways, long story short, I met him and I asked the COs what was wrong with him, and they told me Mohawk got a hold of him. So I already knew when they said Mohawk got a hold of him what they was talking about. But they said one day out in the yard, Mohawk had been chasing the inmate for a while, but one day on the yard, he caught up with him, knocked him out, and when he was unconscious, took advantage of him. You know what I mean by taking advantage of him? Took his manhood. And to this day, that guy's not the same. He finally made parole 20 years later, after the fact, but he is not the same. I'm surprised if he still alive, to be honest with you. He didn't have hardly any type of functioning skills anymore. Couldn't hardly talk to you. I remember one time CO had took a picture of his DOC picture. They got pictures with your numbers on there, and put a birthday hat on his head, and him holding his DOC thing, and he put it on a picture and put it on the rec yard door. So when we took him out to rec, he seen that, and it had the date on there. He looked at that picture, and he could not believe it. Like, he could not believe what they had done. It was like he had seen some alien type form. He stood at it for hours and couldn't realize how they put that on there. But then he seen the date, he seen the date because he was in there like in 1999 or something. He seen the date, it was like 2011 at the time. He didn't know what year it was. It was like he had lost 10 years he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what, he was in a different world for the last 10 years. He did not know nothing. He was tripping out. And it made him so happy, and he was looking all crazy. I mean, man, the stuff that you'll see behind these bars, guys. Like I said, Mohawk had got a hold of him, and for the rest of his life, he will be a changed man. Like I said, he got paroled here a couple years ago. I don't know if he's dead or alive or not. Also, that was the reason why Mohawk became famous, was that inmate from that situation. But he was not the only one that Mohawk did that to. There were several inmates. I'm going to tell you another situation. If you ever seen the show Scared Straight. Scared Straight is a show on A&E, I think, where they take kids in and try to scare them so they won't go to prison. Well, that's pretty much the reason why I'm doing this channel, is kind of a Scared Straight, but kind of also to show kids what can happen or what should be expected when you do go to prison, and try to just avoid getting in trouble, avoid doing drugs, stay on the right path. But back to what I was telling you about the Scared Straight program. They had a Scared Straight program at Mount Olive back in the early 90s. And one of the COs that started back in the early 90s, he was there with me when I was working. And he told me a story about Mohawk. He said, and he told me there was an inmate from Greenbrier County. I'm not going to say his name either. Well, his name was Billy. I won't say his last name. His name was Billy. But this boy Billy come to the Scared Straight program when he was like 16 years old. And he was walking around tough like he was a badass. Billy was a small, young punk at 16 years old back in the early 90s. Well, they ended up taking Billy past Mohawk's cell. And Mohawk looked at him and told him, he said, "If you ever come back here, boy, I'm going to make you my bitch." And Billy looked at him, smirked, all tough like he's a badass, cussed him. And he said, "I promise you, if you ever come back here, you going to be my bitch." So Billy smirked, cussed him out a little bit. All right. Now you switch it. 15 years later, Billy, young punk. No, I ain't gonna be say 15 years later. It was 15 years, probably 15 years later when I seen Billy. Probably 3 or 4 years later, after he seen Mohawk and was introduced to Mohawk, little Billy gets in a car with his buddies. They go rob somebody. Billy's the driver. They go in the house, kill the person. Billy's in the car. Guess what? The guys jump back in the car. Billy and his buddies get caught. Billy gets life without the possibility of getting out. All right. Guess who comes to prison? And guess what happens when you get life without? You go to the big boy house, Mount Olive Correctional Complex. Guess who's waiting for Billy? Oh, Mr. Mohawk. So anyways, the CO told me that Mohawk remembered Billy. Remembered him real well. And unfortunately for Billy, Mohawk took his manhood. So Billy's still the same old Billy, but he's just, well, he's same old minded Billy, but he's not the same old Billy. You get it? He took his manhood. But like I said, guys, I wanted to tell you a story about the infamous Mohawk from the West Virginia Department of Corrections. Fortunately for the people that's watching this that may go to prison in the West Virginia DOC, that Mohawk is no longer here. I heard he passed away like 2 years ago. But you don't have to worry about him. But there's many more booty bandits out there. You won't have to worry about Mohawk, but you might have to worry about Debo or J-Bo or Hero. I don't know. Like I said, stay your ass out of trouble. Let me tell you something. Another thing about Mohawk. Mohawk could box. He was on the boxing team back in the Moundsville back in the day. He was 60-some years old, still ripped. So he was doing this creepo stuff up until the day he died. But the thing about Mohawk is he looked like he had some stuff that was killing people back in the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, that they had no cure for. Get what I'm saying? So not only did you have to worry about him trying to take your manhood, you had to worry about get some shit that Ajax won't take off. You feels me? Like I said, it's a Jerry Gore. Like my channel, subscribe to my channel if you want to see or hear more episodes like this. Please, kids, take this into consideration. You do not want to go to prison. You don't want to be like me, 37, 38 years old, and then go to prison and be faced with something that you would never thought you would be faced with. Luckily, fortunate for me, I got out of there, both sides of the fence. Like I said, I got out of there, and I got out of there thankful by the grace of God that I got out of there without being hurt badly or anything. God protected me. And like I said, y'all need to get your stuff together, stay clean, stay safe, and stay out. Peace. Both sides of the fence, Jerry Gore.